So I'm going to react to the second secular talk video of all time. Incredibly cringy. Oh, it's tough to watch this stuff. It really is. Nobody wants to see... I don't want to see myself doing anything, but I definitely don't want to see myself doing anything when I'm 20 years old and it's 2008 and I'm a smug, arrogant little asshole. Not that I'm not that now, but it was definitely worse back then. So the title of this video is Take Back the Word Liberal. Let's watch and then I'll react.
Hello, YouTube. Now, before I start making videos about the Obama campaign, the Clinton campaign, the McCain campaign, and everything that's going on in the world of politics and everything else, basically, I wanted to take a second and make this video. There is almost no doubt that if you're liberal and you live in the United States, that at one point or another in your life, doesn't matter where you live, even if you live in New York, California, Massachusetts, even the most liberal states, there is no doubt that at one point or another in your life, you have probably come across somebody that has thought that just calling you a liberal was an attack, was an argument, was something that's so negative that you would back off and say, whoa, 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 I'm not liberal. There's no doubt that that's probably happened to you if you're a liberal. Now, that's clearly a product, as I'm sure you guys already know, of the constant demonization of the word liberal by the right wing over the years. It really has gotten to the point that most people think it's a negative thing to be called liberal. Like, the cool thing is to be conservative now, is to associate your name with the word conservative. So, I wanted to take a second out to actually bring an understanding back to the American people of what the word liberal actually means. Because clearly people don't get it anymore. Now, the American Heritage Dictionary defines liberal as not limited to or by established traditional, orthodox, or authoritarian attitudes, views, or dogmas. Free from bigotry. Their second definition is favoring proposals of reform, open to new ideas for progress, and tolerant of the ideas and behaviors of others. Broad-minded. The third definition, tending to give freely. Generous. Now, do we really want to demonize those characteristics? Is it really such a bad thing to be free from bigotry or broad-minded? Because if you really think that those things are bad, I'm sorry, but you're really not that smart. Now, I took it a step further also, and I looked up the word conservative. Now, the one definition that I found in the American Heritage Dictionary that's worthy of repeating here is favoring traditional views and values, tending to oppose change. Now, for 1 second, let's think about what this means. Pretend we live in the 1950s, okay? Now, what would it mean to be a conservative in the 1950s? Well, since you tend to oppose change, what that would mean is that you don't think black people should have civil rights, and you don't think black people, or women too, I guess you could say, they probably want women to just be in the kitchen and do their thing in the kitchen and have no business career or real career outside of the family life. But you don't want black people to have civil rights, and you want black people to be able to vote. Before everybody goes crazy, let me just say that the fact that I'm saying this does not mean I'm stereotyping or prejudging or anything like that. What I am doing is taking the standard definition of the word conservative and applying it to a period of time where, by definition, if you were conservative, you would have had to believe that black people are basically less than you. And we're talking about the 1950s here. This isn't that long ago. This is like 50 years ago. I mean...
Okay. God, I hate watching old stuff of me. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. Okay, so, a few things. Let's go from the beginning and down. You heard me say at the beginning there, before I get into the Obama campaign, the Clinton campaign, and the McCain campaign. So that's how old this is. That's how old this is. This was before Barack Obama was president. So yet again, my reaction is like, damn, I've been in the game for a long-ass time. Now again, there was a period there where I didn't do secular talk. I got a political science degree, and then I went out there in the real world and tried to get a real job, and I was, I worked as a car salesman for a year and a half or something like that. And so there was a big gap there where I didn't upload anything really to the channel. But then in 2012, late 2012 probably, I started to try to do it full time after I left the car dealership. And there's an interesting backstory to that too. One day maybe I'll get into that. But that's it. But this shows, at least as a hobby, I have been doing this for so long. The Rush Limbaugh point, or excuse me, it's not the Rush Limbaugh point. I jotted down Rush Limbaugh here. The point I'm making about liberal and how it has a negative connotation, in my mind, that was basically because of Rush Limbaugh and Fox News. Because they really did succeed. I think it's true what I'm saying there, that they really did succeed at demonizing the word liberal. And they did it with just relentlessly, besmirching liberals and smearing the word liberal and, saying it as if it's almost like a slur. And there was a long period where nobody really called themselves a liberal. Nobody did. Now, what's interesting, watching this in retrospect, is that, like, between 5 and 7 years later, after this video, liberal actually came back in style, where a lot of people started identifying as liberals. And it's funny how the pendulum swings over time. And at one time it was totally unfashionable, then it became fashionable again. And now I think we're getting to a time, yet again, where now it's a little more unfashionable to call yourself a liberal. You can kind of see how I'm like latching on to a persona and an identity there. It's so gross to see, like I hate my smug faces. I hate my like attempt to copy Bill Maher's talking style, which is definitely something that I did for a long time subconsciously. You could totally see it when you look back. I hate how arrogant it sounded when I said, I want to bring an understanding back to the American people about what liberal means. Like, bitch, 17 people are going to watch this video. You know what I mean? Like, it's my second video ever. On what planet can I say, bring an understanding back to the American people? Like, what? So that was hilarious. I also think my New York accent is even worse back then. I think the further back you go, the more you can hear a New York accent when I talk. Now, I probably still have it. In fact, I definitely still have it to some extent, but it's not, I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was then. So I'll let you guys judge on that one. I think the best point I made there is when I said, really, if you're conservative at any point in history, if you go back, look at the definition of conservative and what it means. One of the definitions is, abiding by tradition and thinking things should stay relatively the same. Don't do too much change. If you apply that definition at any point in history, it's sort of like embarrassingly dumb. Like if you are a conservative in the 1950s, you sort of want women and black people to know their place and know their role and stay in that hierarchy, And that's 1950. If we go back to 1880, what does a conservative believe? You know what I mean? So think about it in the context of today. In the context of today, a conservative in America would believe, capitalism for sure is the best system and it would be insane to be without it and try something different. And, they think the U.S. is in its rightful place as the world's sole empire. Like, all those beliefs were common. They're common. We're used to hearing them. But they're also fucking insane. And if you look 50 years in the future and then you look back to this, you'd be like, yeah, that was crazy. That's as crazy as thinking like segregation makes sense. It is. So I think that point is actually true about conservatism, that if you take that definition of it and apply it at any point in time, if you look back and look at what the conservatives believed, it was kind of embarrassing in retrospect. That's not to say that progressives or lefties or liberals always get it right in how they want to do new things, but at least they know, hey, we can't keep it like this. We got to improve shit. We got to try to change some shit. So I do think that point is probably the best point I made there. Gee, it's so tough to watch these old clips. I never want to see anything I do, but definitely not this stuff, because it's like, it just reminds you of the whole process all the way along. Like, for a long time, for those of you who don't do any public speaking, let me try to explain what this is like. And actually, comedians have said similar things. For a long time, you have to, it's sort of like riding a bike. You have to get used to it and get better and better and better. And when you start, you're basically just trying to latch on to a persona and a way of talking and a way of being. And then over time, once you're comfortable enough and you're used to it enough, you can shed the comfort blanket of latching onto other people's personas. And I definitely had that with Bill Maher, probably a little bit of Tom Hartman influence in there. Later on, probably a little bit of Jank, and you'll notice this with if you go back to old Young Turks videos, you'll see everybody they copied a verbal tick that Jank had where he would say right at the end of every sentence. And there was a time period where everybody at TYT would do that. And they did that because everybody sort of has that thing when you do public speaking a lot. You're not just able to go out there and immediately be yourself. You don't even know who the fuck you are. It's like you latch onto a persona and then eventually you're able to outgrow the persona and become yourself. And maybe it's not just like this with public speaking. Maybe that's a common thing with life, and in any field you're in, it's sort of like you sort of got to fake it to make it. And it's like imitation is important and then eventually you can outgrow it. But you got to start somewhere, It's like a professional athlete. Take a basketball player trying to copy the form of Kobe or Michael Jordan or LeBron. It's like they started out just copying them every time they shoot, and then eventually they can generate their own feel and their own ability and their own form that's slightly different. It's a similar thing with public speaking. So when you see it and it's like really early infant stages, oh man, it's hard to watch. It is really hard to watch. So there you have it. Let me know if you guys like these sort of embarrassing segments where I look at embarrassing stuff I said and did. In terms of looks, you could definitely tell I've aged, There's no doubt I aged. My face is so much slimmer then. And that's 08, so I was 20 years old then. I'm 33 now. So you could definitely tell that I've aged, but the audio quality's not great, but I'd be interested to know if people think my voice aged a lot as well. That I don't know about. I feel like I sound very similar. But anyway, there you have it. More very, very embarrassing stuff about me. Oh, wait, one more point. I forgot this. I forgot to tell you guys this. There was a time where I used the label liberal. Then there was a time I used the label progressive. Then I sort of eventually grew into social democrat, because I believe in social democracy, or populist left. That's sort of the most recent iteration. And even, listen, according to one political test, I'm a libertarian socialist. So ultimately, in terms of labels, there's a million of them that apply to me and there's a million of them that don't apply to me. But fundamentally, I don't think the conversation is all that productive and fruitful in the first place. I do think labels sometimes get in the way and make people become more tribal. And so I don't know how much stock I'd put in a word, in a label, in my commentary today. Whereas back then, this was, before, this was more partisan Kyle, more rah-rah Democratic Party Kyle. It's a very, it's a much less evolved ideology. And a lot of the stuff hadn't happened yet. Obama hadn't even been president yet. So you got to remember, we're coming off of the Bush era there, where it really did appear like Republicans are just bad and Democrats are just good. So you got to remember that historical context as you watch that. And yeah, I guess I just don't put as much stock in the conversation about labels anymore. They're useful to some extent, but they're not too useful. So I don't know how much stock I put in that conversation anymore. But either way, there were parts of the commentary that I thought made sense, and there's parts that were so-so.